The, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on air in The War of Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles. Okay. We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being... You told me to do them. Okay. This world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as moral as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their domain over the small spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came to the great delusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crossley service estimated that 32 million people were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature, 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We take you now to the Meridian Room at the Hotel Park Plaza in New York City, where you'll be entertained by the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel, we bring you the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra. With a touch of the Spanish, Ramon Raqueo leads off with La Comparsita.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing explosions occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the observatory at Princeton confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We return you now to the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra, playing for you from the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York.
his favor the ever-popular Stardust, Ramon Raquel and his orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the National Meteorological Bureau has requested the large observatories of the nation to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this program, we have arranged an interview with noted astronomer Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory at Princeton. We return you now, until then, to the music of Ramon Raquel and his orchestra. We take you now to the Princeton Observatory, where Carla Phillips, our commentator, will be interviewing Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carla Phillips speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton. I am standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanisms of the telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly beside me on a small platform peering through the giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Mrs. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you observed through your telescope of the planet Mars?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mrs. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest the Earth. In opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mrs. Phillips.
I see.
Although, that is the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the results of atmospheric conditions particular to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence, as we know it, does not exist on the planet Mars?
I'd say the chances are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Mrs. Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Thank you.
Oh, just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just passed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are coming to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with famous astronomer Professor Pearson. Oh, just a moment. Professor Pearson has just passed me a message. May I read it to our listening audience?
Certainly, Mrs. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the gas eruptions observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mrs. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, I shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes, we've been bringing you a special interview from the observatory at Princeton. bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carla Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News, Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of the Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars occurring between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirmed earlier reports received by American observatories. Now, near our home comes a bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a large object believed to be a meteorite fell in the neighborhood farm of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was visible within hundreds of meters, and the noise impact heard as far north as Elizabeth, New Jersey. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, where our commentator, Carla Phillips, will give you a word picture of the scene as soon as she can reach there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Marinette, where Bobby Millett and his orchestra are offering a special program of dance music. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Phillips again at the Wilmot Farm Professor Pearson and myself will leave the 11 miles from Princeton and Well, I hardly know what to think. Looking for you a word picture of a strange thing in my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that thing, yes, I guess that's the thing, directly across chest burst in the basket. Must have something to do with the ground is street. But I can see if the object itself is at least I see. Diameter of, what would you say, Professor?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please?
One side there, one side.
Well, the police are pushing the crowd back. Here's Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Line. Mr. Wilmuth, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual event? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmuth.
Well, I was listening to the radio and...
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, ma'am. I was listening to the radio and kinda drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, and so I was half dozing and half...
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. And then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio kinda halfways and,
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. And then you saw something?
Not first off. I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A kinda hissing sound. Like this. Kinda like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
I turned my head out the window, and I would have sworn I was sleeping dreaming.
Yes?
I seen that kind of greenish streak, and then zingo! Something smacked the ground. Clearly knocked me out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmuth?
Well, I I ain't quite sure. I reckoned I was, kinda riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmuth. Thank you very much.
You want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. More state police. Wait, line. Oh, hundreds of cars are parked in back of the field, and the police are trying to rope off the roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spotlight on the pit where the object's half buried. Line. Now some of the more daring souls venture near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. They're having an argument with the police. The police win. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've already heard it on your radio. Listen, please. It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move it to my Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it? Oh, Professor Pearson!
Yes, Mrs. Phillips?
Could you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise coming from inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in the meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, is in the shape of a cylinder.
Just a minute! Something's happening! Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific! This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw, and the thing must be hollow! Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying experience. I can't find words. I'll pull the microphone with me as I talk. Wait, no, that wasn't right, was it? Wait a minute, something's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see it's peering out of the top. Two luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be...
Listening to an eyewitness report of what's happening at Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We now return you to Carla Phillips at Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmuth's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and two police officers advance with something in their hands. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole, a flag of truce. If the monster knows what that means, what anything means. Just a minute, something's happening! Huh? Okay, now the whole field's caught fire. Barns, the gas tanks of automobiles. It's coming this way, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue with our scheduled broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some sort of difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return you to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinions that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disruptions. We continue now with our piano interlude.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been handed a note that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. One moment, please. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill, New Jersey. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I see. Okay. Their bodies burnt and destroyed beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you hear is that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area unless with a pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just been listening to the voice of General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawl back into their pit and make no attempts to prevent the efforts of firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. The combined fire departments of Mercer County are working on fighting the flames that menace the entire countryside. We have a special statement from Mr. Harriet. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to return you there at the earliest possible convenience. In the meantime, we take you to Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been told that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, New Jersey, where he has set up an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey, brought to you by a direct wire.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give no authoritative information, either to their nature, their origin, or their purpose here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to this mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute no conductivity. This intense heat that they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose, by means of a parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as a mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. This is my conjecture of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the latest bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carla Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now, here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. The Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the state militia stationed outside of Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here's a bulletin from State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and the vicinity are now under the control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit, and there is no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. Now, here's a special statement from Mr. Harriet McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the state militia at Trenton to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has possibilities to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the line. We take you now to the field headquarters located near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry. Without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns, all cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all the reported resources, these creatures scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It almost looks like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke bordering the Millstone River, probably fire started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something on top of the cylinder. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmeth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. A tub, rather. Wait a minute. That wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal. Kind of a shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why, it's standing on legs, actually rearing up in a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees, and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our own eyes leads to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle that took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine from the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn across the battle area from Plainsboro to Grover's Mill, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state in half. Communication from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean is down. Railroad tracks are torn up, and service from New York to Philadelphia is discontinued, except for routing a few of the trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled Camden, Trenton, and Philadelphia. It is estimated to twice their normal population. Martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we take you to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency, the Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue our daily duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation courageous and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You've just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We're informed that the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here's a special bulletin from New York. Cables have been received from English, French, and German scientific bodies offering assistance. There have been astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The majority voiced the opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. There have been several attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who has observed the Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in the recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines now visible above treetops, moving north toward Somerville with population fleeing ahead of them. The heat ray is not in use. Although advancing at express train speed, the invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here's a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled upon a second cylinder similar to the first, embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from New York to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up a position in the foothills of the Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machine also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainfield. Here's a bulletin from Winston Field, Long Island. A fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight. Just one moment, please, ladies and gentlemen. We've We've run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. We take you now to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range, 32 meters. 32 meters. Projection, 28 degrees. 28 degrees.
Fire!
140 yards to the right, sir.
Shift range, 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection, 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire!
Sir, we got the tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift, 20 meters.
20 meters.
Projection, 32 degrees.
32 degrees.
Fire!
Can't see the shell lamp, sir. They're letting off a smoke.
What is it?
A black smoke. Moving this way, lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Shift range, 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection, 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire!
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming near.
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
23 meters. Projection, 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
22 degrees.
This is Army bombing plane V-843 off the coast of Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vogt, commanding 8 bombers. Reporting to Commander Farfex, Langham Field. This is Vogt reporting to Commander Farfex, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines now in sight, reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder, 6 altogether. 1 machine partially crippled, believed hit from an army shell from the guns in Watchung Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog lying close to the earth, of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passaic River and heading into the Jersey marshes. 1 straddles the Pluisky Skyway. Evident objective is New York City. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 2,000 yards and we'll be over the first. 800. Yeah, it's 100. 1,000 yards and we'll be over the first. 800. 600. 400. 200. And there they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash. Only one thing left. Drop on them. Turn it on. We're driving on the first one. Now the engines are gone. 8.
This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning, poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas masks, useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles use routes 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now reaches over Raymond Boulevard.
2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception, Kay? Please? Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you? I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, New York City. I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 3 hours, over 3 million people have moved out to the road to the north. Hutchinson River Parkway has been kept open for traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All manner of communication with Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is wiped. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped. This may be our last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. There are people here below us holding a service in the cathedral. Now I look down to the docks. All manner of boats, overloaded with fleeing population, pulling out from the docks. Wait a second. Wait, is the enemy is now inside above the palisades. Five great machines. The first one's crossing the river. I can see it from here, waiting the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. I have a bulletin here with me. Russian cylinders have been falling all over the country. One found in Buffalo, Chicago, St. Louis. They seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first one's crossing the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. They rise like a new line of towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their middle hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke, drifting over the city. The people in the streets see it now. They're running towards East River. Thousands of them, dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People are trying to run from it, but it's no use. They're crawling like flies. Now the smoke's getting even faster. It's reached 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue. 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
To X2L, calling CQ. To X2L, calling CQ. To X2L, calling CQ, New York. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone?
It's the announcer person.
You are listening to a CBS presentation of Orson Welles in the Mercury Theater on the Air in an original dramatization of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
As I set down... Oh, can't see. As I set down these notes of paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding, In this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present. Further existence of the lonely derelict of who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who lives at Princeton, and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through his telescope an orange flash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself, I shall preserve human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars, but to write I must live, and to live I must eat. I found moldy bread in the kitchen, and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time I catch sight of a Martian above black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam, as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. And then should I skip to the end? Okay, because you want to... Oh, yep, okay. Morning. Sun streams in the window. The black cloud of gas has lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm has passed through them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road, no traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, a blackened skeleton. I push north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch. I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I'm ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October. Chestnuts are ripe. I feel my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him and I wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond the charred ruins of a dairy. The silo remains standing guard of the waste land like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. Next day, I come to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant has sliced off its hidden towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reached the outskirts. I found new work, undemolished, but humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it. It rose up and became a woman armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where do you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago, from Princeton.
Princeton?
Boston, huh? That's near Grover's Mill!
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here! This is my country! All this end of town down to the river? There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
No, only a bird. A live bird!
Yeah, you get to learn that birds have shadows these days. Hey, we're in the open here. Let's crawl in this doorway here and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah, they've gone over to New York. At night, the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly!
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
Yeah, they got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia. National Guard? That's good. There wasn't any war. Any more than there's war between men and ants.
Yes, but we're edible ants. I found that out. What'll they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic-like, keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun? All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet, bothering them with guns and such stuff, and losing our heads and rushing off into crowds. Now, instead of our rushing around blind, we gotta fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are done now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress, done.
Yes, but if so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for a million years or so. And no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
What is there left?
Life! That's what! I want to live, yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated, and I don't mean to be caught either. Tamed and fattened and bred like an ox?
What are you going to do?
I'm going on right under their feet. I got a plan. We are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we got a chance. And we gotta live and keep free while we learn, see. I thought it all out, see.
Line. Wait, no, tell me the rest. Yes, I always forget that.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. That's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses. They'd be no good. They don't have any stuff in them. They used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running to catch their commuter's train in the morning, afraid they'd be canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and lives invested in cases of accidents. Yeah, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice, roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. Yeah, and after a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Sure! You bet I have. These Martians, they're gonna make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks? Who knows? get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. Yeah. And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
No, that's impossible.
Yes, they will. There's men who do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, though, why...
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we going to live while the Martians own the Earth?
I thought it all out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers under New York. There are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. And there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, eh? We'll get a bunch of strong fellas together. No weak ones. That rubbish out.
As you meant me to go?
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Well, we gotta make safe spaces for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Listen, just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off, heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, see? But humans have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with a heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians. We'd turn it on humans. We'd bring everybody down on their knees.
That's your plan?
Yeah! You, me, and a few more of us, we'd own the world!
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. And then should I read the... All right. Well, after parting with the artillerymen, I came at last to Holland Tunnel. I entered the silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black smoke and several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellar of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and the 40s. I stood alone on Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. He made a wide circle around me, as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I walked up Broadway in the direction of the strange powder, past silent shop windows displaying their mute wares and empty sidewalks, past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark, past a shooting gallery, where a row of empty guns face an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motorcycles in the showroom facing empty streets. From over the top of the General Motors building, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of something. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above the pond at 16th Street. And from there I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their steel arms hanging listlessly by their side. I looked in vain from the Martians that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the intense flock of birds that hovered directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with the hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain, after all man's defense has failed, but the humblest thing that God in his wisdom has put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that though all the deep of space no life existed beyond the pretty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further, dim and wonderful, in the vision I have conjured up in my mind of life, spreading slowly from this little seedbed of our solar system through the imminent vastness of sidereal space. But that's a remote dream. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve to them, and not to us. Is the future ordained, perhaps? Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this last chapter of the record begun at a deserted farm in Grover's Mill. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling on the green, where the new spring grass heals, and the last black scars of this bruised world. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museums where the dissembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange where I recall the time when I first saw it, bright and clean cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of the last great day.
Wells, ladies and gentlemen, out of character to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all of your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, and I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you've learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch. And if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.
Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliate stations coast to coast have brought to you The War of Worlds by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles in the BC Theater. Next month, we present the dramatization of It's a Wonderful Life. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.